What could be the three greatest learnings from this year, sir?
Thank you very much for having me on the SPJ call. It's a pleasure to do this. I think Bhaskar reached out and said that I
Yes,
must do
yes,
this for you guys. Bhaskar is an old friend that I could not
yes.
say no to, and
He's a
that's why
great
I'm here.
friend. Yeah.
Yes. So, if I were to say what are the three biggest learnings from COVID, I think lesson number one is that leadership matters. If you look at country after country, institution after institution, company after company, people who had good leaders have done far better than people with poor leaders. I think the emphasis on leadership, I think, has just got accentuated with COVID, number one. Number two, I think consumers have transformed or changed faster than companies. Consumers have gone digital much faster than a company has. As a result of which, today companies are struggling to catch up with consumers. How have consumers gone digital? They've gone digital in payment, they've gone digital in education, they've gone digital in linking with each other, they've gone digital in sourcing news, they've gone digital in health. Every single aspect, consumers have gone digital. And companies are struggling to come back on that. And the third one, which I think is actually a paradox, but I think it's worth mentioning, in all the talk of nationalism over the last 2 years, the funny part is COVID can only be solved through a global response because not everybody has the access to vaccine. So there will be a few countries which have access to vaccine, and then they'll have to redistribute it to others. In order to ship vaccine from anywhere to anywhere in the world, you need the global airline industry to work for you. You need the global R&D and the testing to work for you. So much as people are talking about nationalism, I think a bigger challenge has been we have recognized that we are interdependent on each other, especially when a crisis happens.
So it is becoming Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam in that sense.
Yeah.
And, and a lot of leaders are talking about this global cooperation now, especially for vaccines.
You have no choice. That's the point I
Yeah.
would say.
So you are one of India's longest serving CEOs, and we have a lot of young managers here this evening who are listening to you. Uh, I wanted to ask you, and have always wanted to ask you, what is this mantra for success as an individual? As you yourself, you also started off at some point and you reached this zenith of success. So what do you think the young people
Yeah.
can learn?
So I would say, here's the catch, Professor. Whatever I say, the young people will say, hey, that's a boring, formula. But trust me, it's a boring formula that works. It's not a boring formula that doesn't work. So the first thing I would say is work very hard. You must be the hardest working guy on the team, in the company, whatever it is. Any assignment which is given to you, any job which is given to you, work very hard to actually deliver results. That's number one. Second, which is very difficult for MBAs, and I must say that in all humility, even though I've been on many boards of IIMs and I'm still on boards of educational institutions, most MBAs are not relevant. They don't stay relevant. They don't study. They don't keep up with the latest concept and trends. As a result of which, they fall back and they are quoting textbooks and concepts which are 10 years old. So you need to learn every day to stay relevant in a fast changing world. If you don't learn, there is no career, there is no future. The third one I would say is always work for the institution that you represent. Be it a company, be it an academic institute, whatever it is, work for the institution first. If you work in the best interest of the institution, then your glory will come. You don't need to worry about that. On the other hand, if you work for your glory, it doesn't mean that you will be successful. It is much like the army. The soldier or the general or whoever it is works for the interest of the country. That's why the armed forces are always a trusted unit. Now, can you bring that discipline and focus wherever you are? And the last one I would say is build a personal network. And that personal network is not a network which trades favors. You have to start building a personal network which is just about keeping in touch. And you can always rely on your network to see you through or to help you as and when you need it. Don't start by saying, what can I get from Professor Dwivedi? Let me be in touch with her and let me ask her for this. That's not the way life works. For example, I'm on this call because of Bhaskar. I've known Bhaskar for 20 years. I've done a session for him in brand equity, and then he requested me to write an article for brand equity at the time of the global financial crisis. I did that. And when he reached out and said, Shiv, can you please do this? I know these people. I said, yes, that's the network he used. If you don't build a network over years, you can never call on it. So please build a network, not with a favor in mind, but just saying it's good to have a network.
That's such an important thing, sir. And the illustration that you've given of Bhaskar and Dr. Das and his amazing network is something that I really admire,
Absolutely
his
right.
ability to connect with people. So you also mentioned in that answer, you were talking about, be loyal and committed to the company that you're working in. And you have worked with some very top-notch companies and really at at some very exciting times at that company as well. Do companies also shape us in our career? Have they helped you shape
Yes,
up who you are as a manager?
absolutely. Yeah. When you're young, I think companies shape you a lot. It doesn't happen after you cross middle management. After you cross middle management and you're into senior management, you're by and large there to shape the company, reshape the company for the future. But if I look at my own career, I would say, if you look at Hindustan Lever, where I spent a number of years, I think the company shaped me, trained me. I think I was the most trained manager in Hindustan Lever, and I'll always be grateful to them for the investment that they made in me. So they shaped my thinking on sales, marketing, general management, etc. Then Nokia. I think Nokia shaped me in terms of thinking very differently. Nokia is a very different company with a huge emphasis on culture, a huge emphasis on teamwork, a huge emphasis on collaboration, which wasn't there in Hindustan Lever. And Nokia taught me to build a scale brand, to build a very big brand. From being nothing, we went to being India's largest multinational, and total, value of business from India was close to $10 billion. From being brand number 77, we went to brand number one, in a matter of 4 years. So Nokia taught me a lot about scaling up and how one does it by shaping products for the Indian masses. PepsiCo was about taking a company which had never been profitable and turning them profitable. That was the mandate, and that was key. PepsiCo had got into a lot of bad habits over years for whatever set of reasons. It happens in every company. And the job was to build the institution. And I think a lot of people in PepsiCo were building their own careers and personal agendas as opposed to building the institution. That was secondary. So putting the institution first was a huge learning and challenge. And if I look at ABG, one of the biggest things I've learned via ABG is that the globalized world matters. In every job I had done, except maybe when I ran Nokia emerging markets, what happened in another country really didn't matter. But today, what happens when President Trump tweets about an aluminum tariff, or somebody else tweets about minerals from Australia? You have to be on top of that, and you have to know that. So I think as long as you are open, I think the company you work in shapes your thinking and shapes your attitude to something or the other related to that company and the global world.
So Shivkumar, I want to go back to the companies a little bit more in detail. For instance, in Nokia, and Nokia is such an amazing, well-loved company even today. When you took over in 2006, I think, and you made it the number one brand from, I think, number 76 on the brand table. And it became India's most trusted brand. When you look back at it, look back at the glory days of Nokia, do you wonder how things could have been different?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. And that's a question I've been asked many, many times since I've left Nokia in 2013, which is 8 years ago. But here's the thing to you. You said that you built Nokia into number one and whatever it is. I didn't build it. It was the team. I was part of the team. There is this fascination, and you hear a lot of rubbish CEOs saying, I'm the reason for success. That is not true at all. I think a CEO or the head of marketing or the head of sales or the head of finance is one of the reasons. You're not the only reason. And I think this thing of trying to glorify that somebody is the reason for success is completely wrong. And I think the media plays a very bad role in that. So I would say I was one of the reasons for the success of Nokia. Having said that, I think it was, it is a great company. It's possibly a company which taught me a lot. It's possibly a company which shaped me and put me on a global map of leadership specifically. I think Nokia went and chose the wrong operating system. for collaboration. We went and chose Windows. When we went and chose Windows in 2011-12, Windows had 4% share of the operating system globally. Android had 82, iOS had, I think, 12 or 13. So we chose the smallest of the operating systems. Nokia's market share at that point of time globally was about 35%, and we were market leaders. Where were we market leaders? We were market leaders in emerging markets, which is what I was running as CEO of emerging markets.
Yeah.
And Windows Phone did not have a phone below $200. The average selling price of a Nokia phone in emerging markets was about $100. Windows did not have any language capability except English. And Nokia's biggest strength was vernacular. So it was an absolute marriage, not made in heaven, but the opposite of that. And hence, it's no surprise that Nokia just didn't, get traction. Nokia is still a very, very trusted brand, but I think there is always a positive lesson, even in a crisis, Professor, which is if you look at all the boys and girls who work for Nokia in that exciting phase, a number of us left in 2013 or maybe before that. I was one of the last of the top 25 managers to leave in 2013. But the good news is each and every manager who's left, all of us didn't crumble because Nokia crumbled. We fought back, we built our own reputation, we went and led companies, we did very well. So there's a very good example for you of absolute dizzying success. Company failed for whatever set of reasons. Okay, we couldn't control some of them, that's okay. But all of us built our careers back. And a number of the Nokia boys and girls are today leading companies, they're CEOs, they're directors, etc. So we didn't let the Nokia failure hit us. We just didn't crumble. That's a good lesson for you.
That is indeed an amazing lesson. And when you moved on from Nokia, I think you went to Pepsi in 2013. And I read that Indra Nui, who was the global chairperson and CEO at that time, and I quote, she said, Shiv Kumar is one of India's most respected leaders. He has a proven ability to take billion-dollar businesses to the next level by maximizing innovation, a proven ability to take to innovation, execution, and collaboration. So when I read that, sir, and I am sure that you must have read it also because this was in the press release, how daunting must it be, that mantle? How do you deal with expectations?
So here's the thing, I would ask a lot of the students to go and read Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. It's a fabulous book about Philip Pirrip, Estelle, etc. Lovely book. So where do expectations come from when you're a CEO? I think expectations come from your boss. And Indra was the boss. And remember, every good boss has high expectations of you. And it's always good for bosses to have a high expectations of you. And I hear a number of young graduates saying, my boss pushes me too much, he makes me work too hard, etc. Trust me, it's good for you. It's good for your career. That's number one. Second, your peers have expectation of you. The expectations peers have of you is that you will be a reliable partner. You will not stab them behind their back. You will not talk behind their back. Those are the expectations that good peers will have of you, that you will support them and they will support you in times of need. Your colleagues, people who work at a level below you, have a lot of expectation of you. The biggest expectation of a CEO, believe it or not, in the rank and file of an organization is his time or her time. People want your time. They want you in every meeting. They want you to see their email. They want you to have a chat with them in the corridor. So the expectation is your ability to give them time. The media has expectation of you. The media plays a very important role. And the expectation they have of you is, are you insightful? Are you giving them a new perspective about the industry? Are you able to reshape the industry differently for the media? That's the expectation people have of you. The ecosystem largely has an expectation of profitable growth with you. Whether it's your distributors, whether it's your vendor ecosystem, whether it's educational institutions, anybody, they will have a profitable growth model in their mind in terms of their expectations with you. So you have to meet a number of expectations, not just your boss's expectations. So the way I would like you to think about it is, what can you contribute to the success of others? If you can contribute to the success of others in the ecosystem and the company, I think you will meet most expectations.
So talking about sir expectations, I think the COVID crisis, really, we didn't know what to expect. And a lot of us, and in all organizations, employees, people, workers, have had so many questions. So at the leadership level at Aditya Birla Group, How have you dealt with it in this current role? The expectations.
So I've learned a lot. In fact, it's exactly a year since COVID started. I remember March 8th last year, I was supposed to fly out to Atlanta and then to Michigan to do the Michigan India Conference keynote address on the topic of stability and change. I'm doing that now on March 19th. I canceled my meeting on the 8th saying, look, it's not safe to travel and I'm not going. It's exactly a year since COVID. So now let's look at the learnings of COVID. I think the first lesson we've learned is that leaders must integrate. Work has got distributed. People are working from home. People are working from office. I've been working from office since August 17th, and I've been traveling. I think leaders need to integrate. That's the primary role of leaders. Leaders need to be visible. Leaders need to communicate. Leaders need to show empathy and trust. I think the demands on leadership, on the soft side of leadership, has gone up exponentially thanks to COVID. The second thing I would say is the model of an organization has been borrowed from two entities. One is the army and two is the church. And both the army and church are vertical hierarchies. There's somebody at the top who tells somebody below him, etc. One of the things COVID has taught us is that we need horizontal skills and horizontal capabilities, as opposed to vertical skills and vertical capabilities. So what are horizontal capabilities? Digital is a horizontal capability which runs across all functions. Collaboration is a horizontal capability. Okay, the customer, every single function has felt the need of the customer and the pain point of the customer. Cost is a horizontal capability. In the past, we left cost to the finance department and said, let them manage it. Today, every department has to be cost prudent because they're getting hammered by the digital world. Agility is a horizontal capability. It is not enough for one function to be agile or fast. It is important for the horizontal in the organization to be that. So I would say that speed, the need for speed, has just accentuated thanks to COVID. That's something that all of us have learned. So I was looking back at the last 20 years. In the last 20 years, no big company has beaten a small company. However, a fast company has beaten a slow company. And I think COVID has just reaffirmed that lesson to all of us.
Well, how nicely said. And you are so good with your words, and that's why you're such a prolific writer. So your new book has just come out.
Can't hear you, Professor.
Choice. Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I was saying you're so good with words, and that's why you're such a good writer. Your new book has just come out. It's called The Right Choice. I was reading about it. It says it has 10 frequently faced dilemmas in a person's career. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
So if I were to ask you, what is the most difficult dilemma?
The most difficult dilemma through my career has been a CEO. I've been a CEO for half my life, my corporate life. And why is it a dilemma? Because, at the workplace, whom do you trust is a perennial question in your mind. Okay. And you tend to trust people who tell you the truth. At least that's what I do. I'm not a great guy for building what I call sycophants or chamchas. Okay. I don't believe in that at all. Every company I've gone to, I've never taken people from my previous company. I've just built the organization the way it is. So whom do you trust is a very important question. And there is no manual for it. There is no answer for it. It's purely emotional, and you do it through trial and error. That's the biggest dilemma of a CEO. Trust me. Doing vision, doing strategy, allocating capital, there are far easier things to do. Okay. The human side of whom do you trust is an important one. The second one, and every CEO you speak to will tell you that, he doesn't face it, but he's lying. He or she is lying. I can assure you that, is intellectual dishonesty in a company. Especially when you do a job and you leave the job, a lot of people will say the exact opposite of what they told you when you did that job. Okay. So there is rampant intellectual dishonesty when you're a CEO, because nobody wants to tell the boss the truth. So they just want to cover themselves up. So trust and intellectual dishonesty. Okay. How do you handle them as a CEO is the biggest challenge.
And I think experience helps in that. The longer you work, the better you get with people.
Correct. Sometimes the most, surprising people help you with it. Sometimes the most trusted people, let you down on that. Let me give you a personal example. When I was a brand manager, we had a challenge with one of my bosses who was financially corrupt and intellectually dishonest. So a bunch of us took up the case to audit, etc. And the audit team investigated and found that while everything was not above board, there was reason for him not to have behaved in the way he did. And he was suspended for a month or two, and he was asked not to come to office. But whenever he came to office, he would go meet his old pals. And trust me, I used to have a coffee boy, a tea boy. Every time this boss was under suspension would come to the office, that tea boy would come to me, place a tea on my table and say, this man is there in the other room, be careful, don't go there. He, even though he had worked with that guy for 20 years, he knew what the truth was. That surprised me. And sometimes, in the best of times or in the worst of times, the most surprising people stand by you. And you recognize what their value system is at that point of time. And those are deep lessons that I've always valued.
So you're talking about lessons and stories. Any other such incidents that you remember from your career that have had an impact, like this one that you were talking about?
Interesting. One of the things I remember most is on a cold winter day, I went to Helsinki for my final interview. I was the most interviewed manager for Nokia. I think I had 13 interviews before I went to the CEO. Okay, they had the biggest hunt for CEOs. I think the who's who was all lined up. It took 3-4 months. And finally, I landed up here in the head office of Nokia. I met the HR head, Halston, and then I went to meet the CEO, Olli-Pekka Koloswa. Of course, when they interview you, there's a huge docket in terms of your personal growth, your values, blah, blah. There are tons of questionnaires which HR departments will tell you. What was so interesting, and it played such an important role in my thinking, was Olli-Pekka, who was the CEO. He sat down before me and said, I've read all the documents about you. I've read everything that you've done. I've read all your scores, etc., which the HR department has sent. So I just want to get to know you. So we talked for about 15 minutes. The interview was for 1 hour. He spoke for 15 minutes. At the end of 15 minutes, he said something really prophetic. He said, Shiv, I'm going to give you the job. Now can we spend the next 45 minutes discussing how you're going to do this job? And I felt that it was such a nice way of giving confidence to somebody, rather than saying, you know what, I will interview for 1 hour, somebody will get back to you, etc.
Yeah, HR will get back.
That's a lesson I carried in my mind. Every time I was interviewing somebody, if I found the person to be good, I would say, you have the job, now let's discuss how you do it. I think that left such a big, imprint on me. And I just recently WhatsApped him a month ago for my book and said, hey, Olli-Pekka, I'm sending you my book. And I reminded him of this, saying that, I learned a lot from you because you're such a genuine and good human being.
Shiv, I think we also have a lot to learn from you. I have heard you speak on several occasions. Like I said before, you have come to SPAC, you have come at one of our convocations, and you're a fabulous speaker, and you also write so well. So I'm a communication teacher. And a lot of people here listening. Well, I just want to ask you, how do you do it with aplomb? What do you do to make your communication skills so strong?
Great question. Thank you for asking that, Professor. A lot of what I'm going to say, 99% of the people in the world will not believe me. And I guarantee you, 99% of the students sitting here will not believe me too. But that's okay. I'm not here to convince you to believe me. I know what I'm saying is the right. The first thing about whether you want to do a speech or you want to write or whatever you want to do is you have to prepare very, very hard. It's not easy. Very few people do. So for example, okay, I've prepared for this. I've written down everything there is about SPJ, whatever I know, and I've prepared for it. Typically, for every 1 minute of a talk I'm asked to give, I prepare for 30 minutes for that 1 minute. So this is a 30-minute chat as I saw it when you sent the invitation. So I've spent close to 300 minutes thinking about it. Now, what all should I be talking about and why should I be talking about it? So there is no substitute for preparation. Okay, prepare, prepare, prepare is the hallmark of a good presentation or a good speech or a good article. Number one. Number two, in my 30 plus years of a career, I have never repeated a presentation in my life. Every time there is a session, I do a fresh presentation. So for example, if you were to tell me, Shiv, speak about the role of brands, I would ask you, who are the students? who are the people listening to me, and I would make a presentation for them. If day after tomorrow, Morgan Stanley called me and said, Shiv, do a presentation on brands, I would ask them who's the customer, and then I would redo a presentation for them. So even the same topic, I never take slides from the previous presentation. I never repeat a presentation, because there's a cardinal truth in that, which is called honoring the room. You must always honor the customer or your listener or whoever is watching you. I think that's the second one, which I would say. Then the third one I would say is bring a fresh point of view. I tend to look at a lot of data. I tend to talk to a number of people, and I write down my various points in books over time about some economic data or a quote or whatever it is. And then I look through that and say, is that relevant to this speech that I'm making? If it is, then I tend to borrow from it, and then I tend to bring it there. So that's what it is. It's preparation. Never repeat anything that you've spoken before. You'll become dull and boring. Okay, make people think differently. Bring fresh data, but more important, bring fresh insights.
Sure, we are all looking forward to read this book now. But how do you find the time for all of this? Because you're such a busy person, and then we also ask you to come and talk to us. There are so many people asking for your time. And I just saw your notebook. You write so nicely, neatly, clearly. You must be reading a lot. So how do you plan your day?
Here's the thing. On any given day, there is what I call dead time, and there's what's called live time. Live time is typically when you're at work, you're in meetings, etc., etc. What differentiates people who are good at time management compared to people who are not good at time management is their ability to multitask in dead time. So what is dead time? You're going in a car, you're not driving. You can make a few phone calls, as an example, and be in touch with people. You're sitting in a flight, you're flying for 2 hours. You can read a book, or you can answer all your emails and finish it off. Okay. So don't ever let idle time overcome you. A lot of people say, I'm too busy. What are you busy with? Okay. That's what I would ask. So you have to use your dead time. Okay. And you have to be very clear that if you want to do a number of things, you have to sacrifice something. For example, I used to play tennis. I used to play cricket for university. I don't do that anymore. I just jog. I go for a run every day. That's what I do. I used to listen to a lot of music. I don't listen to so much music now. I rarely watch movies. I'm not a party goer. So a number of things which you did when you're a junior manager or middle manager go down, and you have to recognize that, and you have to be comfortable with it. The other thing which I told you is about network and your contribution. Anybody who's worked with me, if they call me and say, Shiv, I want you to come and talk to my new company, I rarely say no. Okay, because I believe the least I can do for all the hard work that that person put in when I was his or her CEO is to reciprocate. But I just say, just look at my calendar, work with my assistant, and we'll figure it out. That's how I tend to do it. So I do all this with a very clear notion that I'm not expecting anything in return. But if I can contribute to you, your class, SPJ, I'm happy. Even if you take out one idea or one concept from these 30 minutes, I'm more than happy. So I think you need to be a giver and not a taker if you want to have that attitude. So that's what I would sum up in terms of my time management. Everybody has 24 hours. You have every right to make the maximum use of it. I'm not saying going to parties is bad. I'm not saying going to movies is bad. But if you do that, then it will lead into something else. You have to recognize that.
That is brilliant. And time management, what you just said, I think there is no real secret recipe to success. It is all these things that you actually do, and you're just reminding us. As you know, sir, that this forum is open to our faculty, students, and students from other colleges are also joined in because it's a inter-college event, OJAS. So I got a set of questions which our team had asked people. So there is a person called Shiny K from IIM Tiruchirappalli. They have asked a question about why
I can't hear you,
remote work.
Professor.
Okay, maybe there's something wrong with my mic. Can you hear me better?
Can't hear you.
Avni? Is there a
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Avni, is it okay, sir, now?
Yeah, now I can hear you, please.
Oh,
Thank you, Professor.
I'm holding it close to my mouth. So the question that the student is asking from IMK is, while remote work has
I am
flattered...
K or I am Trichy, you said?
Oh, sorry, I am Trichapalli. Yes, I
Yeah.
am T.
I
While
am Trichy.
remote
Yeah,
work...
I heard that. Yeah.
Trichy, sorry, yeah. Has flattened hierarchy, say, and brought the teams closer, it still adds layers of challenges and communication. How do we as leaders instill trust in the team and keep the team motivated?
Thank you for
That is a
asking,
real
Shiny.
challenge.
I am Trichy. I came to do a convocation speech at I am Trichy in 2015, I think. Okay, I remember that. Prafula Agnihotri was the director, and then Dr. Metri was the director, who's now gone to I am Nagpur. I was just exchanging some WhatsApp with him. He was telling me that the campus placement in I am Nagpur has been very good. So the concept of trust has nothing to do with hierarchy. It has nothing to do with number of levels. It has nothing to do with any of that. The concept of trust has to do with authenticity. What is trust? Trust, simply put, is you will not hurt me when I'm vulnerable. That's all. If anybody, any employee, any manager feels vulnerable and he or she feels that the boss will hurt him or her, then there will be lack of trust. So I think the key thing is for leaders to be authentic. Whatever is the truth, say it. Say it in a transparent manner. Say it in an honest manner. If you don't have the answer, say I don't have the answer, but I'll figure out and come back to you. I think just being authentic is possibly the first step of building trust.
Okay. I have another question from Shivam Mehta from ICFI Business School, Hyderabad. Which are the top 3 skills that one should focus to get an edge over competitive field?
What
Three
does he mean
skills.
by a competitive field? Does it mean
I think
colleagues?
it's from
Well, that's wrong.
competitions. Yeah, competition.
No. You should never look at your peer group as competition. If you look at your peer group as competition, you'll always work in a relative manner. I would suggest to you, work at an absolute level. An absolute level is, if you're in sales, am I the best sales manager in the company, in the industry, globally? Am I the best brand manager? Am I the best supply chain manager? Am I the best finance manager? Try to be the very best in your craft. If you're the very best in your craft, you don't need to worry about competitive field or whatever it is. But since you asked the question, I think being absolutely digitally fluent is very important for tomorrow's world. Number 2, the ability to communicate simply and succinctly, I think, is a very, very important skill. And the third, I would say, is the ability to be a great team player, to be a collaborative team player is also crucial. I think these are the things which I would say are absolutely needed in a horizontal world of tomorrow.
So there are some questions and they are related, and they are from students from our college only, Akshat and Nitesh, and there are a few others also who are asking similar questions about how has ABG dealt with the COVID crisis, and has there been any change in the policies or the culture since you have joined, and especially during COVID time?
So here's the thing. When COVID started, I don't think anybody knew what to expect. See, COVID is what Donald Rumsfeld said, the unknown unknown. It came from left field. Nobody had any idea. Absolutely. So if somebody tells you that, they knew what to do in COVID, they're absolutely plain wrong. The only people who took out an insurance against something like this was Wimbledon, and they got 140 million pounds or something like that. Okay. Yes. I don't think anybody was prepared. So it's like this. A number of you fly, and I was just talking to one of the captains, retired captains, Sunil, a day before yesterday. So I asked him, how do you fly through turbulence, Captain? Tell me. He said, Shiv, the moment there is turbulence, there's a very clear guideline which says reduce your speed to this level, because you're not supposed to go for the type of aircraft beyond a particular speed. So how is that relevant to COVID? The moment you hit COVID, everybody knew that top line would be impacted. The moment top line is impacted, you know that the margin you make, the absolute as well as the percentage, both drop because your fixed costs are high. So the first thing we needed to do was to reduce our cost base. Every business took a good hard look at their cost base and trimmed it. The second is, remember, customers are panicking. You need to engage with customers. You need to have a digital bridge to them. You need to do calls on the video, etc., to tell them what's really happening, because everybody is searching for answers. That's the second thing we did. Finally, we had to communicate to our organization and clearly say, there are no layoffs, things are fine. It might be a blip, it might be a tough year, but we'll come back. We are here for the long haul. And whatever we do, remember, we must be the best in that industry. In every crisis, the people who win in a crisis are people who are the best organizations. Why do they win in a crisis? Because they are better prepared, they have better processes, they have better people. They do not freeze like rabbits in front of a headlight. Okay, so you must be the best in your industry. The industry can be down 50%. The global fashion industry is 7% profit this year compared to 100 last year. But you must be the best in that. If you are the best in that, when the market picks up, you will gain handsomely. So those are the simple rules to apply.
I have a few other questions, but I was hoping that if the audience present in the meeting right now would like to ask anything or comment anything. I have several of my faculty colleagues here as well. So as you can see, sir, Akshay is asking, how does one break his own comfort zone or cocoon and take the leap of faith to progress for any assignment? I think he's inspired by what you were saying about, uh, time management.
Yeah, so the thing is, people call it by different names. Some people say you must have divine dissatisfaction. Okay, and you should say,
Divine
hey, what can I do
dissatisfaction.
better? Divine dissatisfaction.
So how do you explain that?
Yeah, I'll explain that. Is to say, okay, we've done well. What can I do better? What have I learned from it? So let me give you two examples. Okay, number one, in Nokia, our CEO is to do that, and is to say that repeatedly, and the whole management team would say that globally too. They would say, never get arrogant with success. We were so successful with Nokia. Nokia went from being $3 billion in 91 to $50 billion in 2010 or so. And they would always say, never get arrogant. The next downturn could happen. So never get arrogant. So that's one way. Never to think that you're successful and there's nothing more to learn. Okay, that's the absolute first one. So you need to learn again and again and not stay arrogant. The second I would say is, think about all the people who depend on you. Okay, and how would they want you to shape up? How would they want you to really look at the future? Are you happy being where you are, or are the expectations of people at a much higher level from you? And for that, you need to do what I call you prepare. You say, you know what, I think I can fly higher, I can do better. If you seriously think that, then you must invest in it. You must invest your time, you must invest your effort, and you must invest in the right capability. Okay, if you're continuously dissatisfied, I think that's a good way to think about it. A great example is the Afterburner Consulting Company in America. These are a bunch of F-15 fighter pilots who started a consulting firm. And what they do is they borrow from the principles of fighter pilots. When fighter pilots go in a squadron, when they come back, they sit down in a room without hierarchy and discuss what went right, what went wrong. So somebody will say, without hierarchy, they might tell the squadron leader, you know what, I think you turned left too quickly. That was wrong. You could have got us into an accident. Or somebody might say, you were too slow. I think the concept of a debrief and staying true to debrief without hierarchy is another way. So debrief yourself after every day, after every week, after every month. I tend to look at my schedule in the morning. I tend to look at my schedule in the evening and say, what have I learned through the day? Is there anything I could have done better? Okay, if you do that, I think that will be the next step towards the divine dissatisfaction that you asked me to answer.
I think that's something that we should start from today, everybody who's listening, that we should do a debrief, a self-debrief of what I did well and what I can improve on every day. That's an amazing thing that you said. Swami has raised his hand and he wanted to ask a question. Swami, you want to ask
Please
yourself?
go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Hello, sir. Thanks for coming here. Sir, you spoke about building a network in one of the first questions, and we all keep changing companies, and it's actually very difficult to maintain, a network, a genuine one. How do you personally maintain it? Maybe 20 years back you were working some other place. How do you stay in touch? How do you do it?
Yeah, see, today the tools available are far better and far more. You can stay in touch on LinkedIn, you can stay in touch on Facebook, you can stay in touch on Twitter, you can stay in touch WhatsApp, whatever it is. I think it's the attitude which is more important. And I think many people just don't have the attitude because we come from a situation of, do I need anything from this guy? I don't need to reply to him. Do I need anything from this girl? I don't need to reply to her. So if that's your attitude, you'll never build a network. On the other hand, if your attitude is, if anybody reaches out to me, I will respond. I will definitely respond. So I make it a habit to respond to all my emails. I make it a habit to respond to all the WhatsApp messages I get. Even if my answer has to be no, I say not now, can't do it. A lot of people have asked me for sessions over the last 12 months, and I've not accepted 99% of them. But I would always say, I'm busy. This is the reason I cannot do it. I wish you all the best. Thank you. Okay, so I think it is in your mind. And I think most people don't do it because they believe they don't get anything from it. I personally derive a lot of value from my network. And whenever I've had the need, I've reached out to my network and it's always helped me.
That's another very
Thank you,
important
sir.
point, sir. I keep saying this to whoever is listening, and I also believe that we should reply to messages or emails immediately and not sit on them.
Yeah. So a related question which you had asked me was about preparation, So
Yeah.
I knew, Professor, that you were going to do this session. So I actually went to YouTube and said, who is this professor who is going to talk to me? And I saw you going on that,
Oh, the
two-wheeler
most
around the
embarrassing
institute
video
and,
you've
talking
seen.
about all that you do in SPJIMR. It gave me a sense of who is going to talk to me. So
Yes.
that's what I mean by, then I have a mental map of who I'm going to talk to. Okay.
Yes.
It takes 5 minutes, but it gives you a good sense.
Thank you for doing that. And I had forgotten about that video altogether. So that's another thing. The internet has the much far-reaching memory than we have. Sir, Professor Devraj Ghoshal, who's also acquainted with you, he's wanting to ask a question, I think.
Devraj, we are supposed to do a session together. You already written about it. Yes, I have to do it for you. I promised you and I've said yes.
Yes. So Shiv, you've worked in big MNCs, you've worked in Indian companies. So how is it different, managing an Indian firm from a Western multinational? Is there a different way of management in such firms?
The biggest thing I would say is first is the leader of the firm. In multinational organizations, the leader will stay for 5 years and move on. That doesn't happen in an Indian conglomerate. The leader is by and large the owner in many cases, and hence he or she will have a time frame which is maybe 20, 30 years. It's not 5 years. So in a multinational, everybody is asking, okay, now this is the CEO. How long is he there? Who's going to be the next CEO? And everybody is jockeying for position and aligning. And in that kind of a mental model, which is driven by Wall Street or the City of London or Dalal Street or whatever you want to call it, okay, which is driven by financial returns, everything is tomorrow, it's this quarter, it's next quarter. Okay. And in a number of those cases, the real long term does not get, I think, the due attention. That's my experience. I've just finished reading, Imel's book, and it just reinforces what I'm saying. Whereas in an Indian type of organization, let me give you a practical example from Godrej. I was on the board of Godrej for 8 years, and Godrej used me very well as a board member. They would ask me to come and speak at their annual conferences, at their strategic workshops, get to know their people, etc. It was funny that, I noticed this. Whenever Adi stood up and spoke, Adi Godrej, most employees would say, he's the guy who's giving me the salary. Okay. He's the guy 70 years ago, 50 years ago, he and his family have built this company. So they had a personal loyalty to him. Okay. Even though they might not have known him. Whenever I stood up and spoke in the same group, people will say, Shiv, you speak so well. You're such a good professional manager. So I think that's the fundamental difference. People have much more loyalty to the leadership and the people who run or who have built an Indian organization. That loyalty does not exist because things are fleeting, things change in global multinational corporations.
So Ruchi has a question to ask you.
Yes, please.
Hello, sir. Thanks for the session. It's really inspiring. I have one question, sir.
Yes, please.
What would be your key pointers for young managers like us who will step into the corporate world to build trust among team members? Like probably they'll be much older to us and much more experienced. So how do we sail through that phase?
Yeah, see, whenever you are a junior manager, at the end of your institute, you will go join as a junior manager, whichever function, doesn't matter. What is the role of a junior manager is the question you need to ask yourself. The role of a junior manager is to execute brilliantly. That's it, full stop. The role of a junior manager is not to be the managing director. The moment you think of yourself like that, you're down doomsday path. So whatever is given to you, please execute it brilliantly. I think that's what's important. You want to add value to it, by all means add value to it and tell your team that this is what I'm doing. The role of a middle manager is to coach junior managers and to actually coordinate work. That's the role of a middle manager. The role of a senior manager is to manage the complexity of the business, which comes from different functions wanting to do different things. So when you are a junior manager, just because you have an MBA from SPJ does not give you the right to start thinking you're a middle manager or a senior manager. Your primary focus has to be delivery of the execution mandate. If you do that, people will trust you hand over fist.
Thank you, sir.
Manan, would you like to ask your question? Is Manan there? Or I can ask on his behalf. He is actually asking again about Nokia and Blackberry on most of the mobile market. According to you, what lead to their downfall to companies like Apple? But I think you did explain quite a lot of this already.
Yeah, I explained from the platform point of view. The other thing I would say is that app developers tend to work on platforms which monetize their apps. So if you have a small base of mobile users like Windows does, there is no way app developers will develop apps for you. So that's why the apps are most on Android, followed by iOS. The other thing I think Apple did very well was to do the services part, which is iTunes, etc., etc. And now they're going to do credit card and payments. I think the phone is the place you will live from. And this is not new. It's not that Nokia didn't know it. We knew it long time ago. In 2007-8, Nokia would say that when you leave home, okay, you leave with the following things today, which is your keys, your car, and something else, your wallet. In the future, we said you will leave only with your car. You don't need either a wallet or keys. The phone will act as that. So that's what we used to say.
So can we take one last question? It's almost
Yes,
6 o'clock. So Akshat Vatsal has one last question to ask. Okay, he is having some technical issues. He's in the call, but I will ask on his behalf. He says, sometimes people tend to get overly engaged in building a skill. However, it does take significant time, which could have perhaps been spent honing other skills too. How do we maintain a balance between the depth and breadth of skills which we do?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. See, there are some skills which are absolutely fundamental. I think your core competence, whatever it is, or capability, whatever you want to call it, you're a sales guy, you're a marketing guy, you're an ops guy, you're a finance guy, you got to be damn good at that. Okay, that is an absolute must. Managing people is an absolute must-have skill. There's absolutely no doubt about that. I think communication is a must-have skill. Now, you cannot be great at your work and not have the ability to communicate that. Okay, so in every industry, then you'll have some skill or the other, and you need to understand that. So I think sometimes overdoing your strength is a weakness also. So recognize that. You must have the optimum level to which you maximize this. For example, let's take one of your capabilities is being articulate. So you said, Professor, that I'm articulate. If I sit in a meeting and I keep talking, then people will say, you know what, this guy doesn't listen. So I'm overplaying my strength, which is the ability to articulate. Let's take the opposite. Suppose I'm a reflective person and I don't talk much in a meeting. But if I don't talk, then people will say, what is this guy doing in this meeting? Okay, you cannot overdo your reflectiveness there in that meeting. Okay, so I think you need to balance every capability you have. Don't overuse it, use it to the optimum level. And when you see people's reaction around you, you will know whether you're overdoing it or underdoing it.
I said it was the last question, but I have another student, Niharika, who's raised a hand. Can you take that question?
So I had one question. There's always been this debate about being a generalist or a specialist. What is better? So what are your thoughts on the same, and what is it that as young managers we should be focusing on?
depends on what you want, Niharika. If you are aiming for the top job in a company, which is the CEO's job or whatever it is, then you would want to be a generalist. But you cannot be a journalist without understanding the depths of each of the functions that you might lead one day. On the other hand, suppose you are in the legal function, you might well say, I want to be the best at it. Or you are in the supply chain function, you might say, I want to be the best at it. Or you are in the HR function, you might say, I want to be the best at it. So there are some functions where you want to drill deep in and you say, I want to be at the top of the heap here. That's fine. Okay. But if you're aiming for what I call a general manager job, then you need width. Okay. A typical CEO has 12 to 15 people reporting to him. So which means if you're not able to add value to at least 8 to 10 of them, they will laugh you away. So you have to have working knowledge of that. And how do you develop that working knowledge over your career? By putting up your hand and volunteering for projects, by learning more about other functions, by going to training programs, things like that, by reading about how things happen in those other things. So that's how you develop the width perspective.
Thank you, Niharika. Thank you, Mr. Shivakumar. I think this has been a fabulous 1 hour. We have learned so much, so many new ideas. And again, I have to compliment you, sir, the way you put your ideas into words. It really, everybody has understood everything you said. And I'm personally taking some things back that I would like to follow in my life. You're incredible. Your success is incredible. We wish you all the best, sir. Good health and, continue to succeed like you have. Write more books. And we hope to get our hands on this one and read this and then get back to you.
Please order the book.
Yes.
And it's called The Right Choice by Shiv Shivakumar,
Right.
available on Amazon. And please do send me feedback. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. I always say that. And so do send me the feedback, both positive and challenging feedback. I'm more than happy to learn from it. Okay.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you,
sir.
Devraj. All the best.